Hello and welcome to Live Your Language, Tips and Inspiration for Your Bilingual Life. I'm Stephanie, a PhD student that is raising her two children in French, my non-native language, and in Spanish. So I recently uploaded my years 5 and 6 update where I talk about how my kids are speaking their languages and how the progress has been going. And at the time I recorded, remember thinking, all things considered, I think they're doing pretty well. But I recently looked at some of my older update videos where I saw my kids speaking French really well. I saw my youngest speaking Spanish amazingly. And I realized that there can actually be two narratives to my latest update video. If you haven't watched it, feel free to pause this and go watch it, but I'll just give you a bit of a recap. Now my two children are understanding a lot of French and Spanish, most of it honestly, but they're responding in English.
A little bit more.
Quel jeu?
I can't get a press to dodge it back.
Ouais, mais en fait c'est l'heure de dormir.
But I have to do one more.
¿Qué viste? ¿Un paisaje o cómo fue?
I saw a lot of islands.
And so I think that after watching that update video, there are kind of two narratives that we can use to explain this. The first is, this is expected. I mean, we know that with the majority language, especially English being just ever present and having so much influence in their lives, that it's almost expected that they're going to be responding in English at some point. The influence of English is just too great. And pair that with the fact that my youngest just started going within the last 2 years to a majority language school. And even my oldest, who is in a Spanish immersion program, is still going half the day in English. And I have a suspicion that most of his friends and around him speak English, him also, during the day, even in the Spanish portion of the day. And then also that son, the oldest, went to 1 year of half-day preschool in English. So given the introduction of an English majority school situation and making friends in that language, it's almost expected and understandable that they would be, obviously English dominant and responding a lot more in English. But that said, I think there's also another narrative that we can kind of approach, a parallel narrative, I'll say, and that is, this is what happens when you let your guard down and you loosen up a bit, because in the beginning I was very, very strict about one parent, one language, and I worked really, really, really hard to make sure that I spoke as much French as possible. And in these last 2 years, and the years that cover my latest update video, I talk about how I've sort of allowed more English into the house, including my own. And I've talked about the situations in which I speak more English, like during our eating breakfast at the breakfast table, when discussing social, emotional topics and some of the issues that I wanted my son to be able to discuss with his friends in English, and then also situations where the people around us are not French speakers and will not understand what we're saying. So I've been speaking English in those situations. And so the second narrative could be, now that I have sort of loosened up a bit, that this is what happens and this is the consequence. So I think that even though I am really proud of their ability to understand and how far we've come, and proud of myself for being able to sustain this lifestyle choice, because it truly is a lifestyle choice for going on 6 years now, I definitely see some areas of improvement. And I have some advice too for those in this situation who find themselves in a situation kind of like mine, where their kids are just understanding and responding in the majority language. So that said, I wanted to share some reflections that I had after thinking about my latest update video and comparing it with the earlier update videos where they're really speaking French very well. So let's talk now about some of the things that I'm going to do and that you might consider doing too to really recommit myself to this long bilingual parenting journey, this non-native bilingual parenting journey, or what I like to call foreign language parenting. I am recommitting myself to making sure that I can control the things that I can control and emphasize French where I can, because that habit of speaking French all the time with my kids was a really, really hard habit to create. And even though going back to speaking more French after sort of sliding back and relying more on English is going to feel difficult, there's nothing more difficult than speaking French, your non-native language, to a baby who is not responding, and it feels unnatural. So anyway, let's get into some of these tips. I am making sure that I'm amplifying high quality examples of the foreign language. I also discussed in my update video that one of the reasons why I do switch to English is because I don't have the vocabulary that I need to describe what I want, and I didn't want my kids to pay the price or to miss out on some really great vocabulary that they can use one day in their own lives, and in reading and in writing and those sorts of things. So that means that when I do have a high quality language source, that means a native speaker or something that native speakers would use, I need to amplify those sources. So that means that I want to amplify definitely when I get the tutor, time with the tutor, but also when they're watching TV or listening to audiobooks. I want to make sure that I don't pass up those opportunities to present them with the high quality examples of language. So sometimes, like at bedtime, if they bring me a book from school, it's in English, and I do read their English books to them in English now for the same reason I discussed earlier, vocabulary. I want to make sure that I'm also reading French books. I want to make sure that when the opportunity comes to listen to something or to watch something English, that I'm really emphasizing that we need to listen to something in French and that we need to read something in French. Or even if we do watch a little something in English, make sure that we're watching more in French. I've seen in my daily life this sort of slide where they start to get their favorites in English, you know, their favorite books, their favorite TV shows, and they don't have a French option for a lot of those. But I really want to try and work harder to make sure that I expose them to new TV shows that maybe could become their favorites, and that whatever we do, we really hold that TV time or the story time sacred and make sure that those are times where we're really using French. I also plan to ask my parents to help me recommit to speaking the foreign language with them. So I've mentioned in other videos that my mom speaks French and my dad speaks Spanish, and both of them have also sort of gotten used to speaking English with them. I'm going to ask them if they would help me recommit and try their best, you know, whenever they can, to speak with the kids in Spanish and in French. The second way that I'm going to be recommitting myself to emphasizing French in our household is that I'm going to make sure that I am recreating and fortifying the habit that I have for speaking French. I've mentioned also in some of my older videos, but I'll say it again. I think one of the hardest things about being a foreign language parent is creating the habit of speaking the foreign language. The vocabulary is also a huge barrier, but getting used to speaking that foreign language all the time is just a huge, huge feat. And for any of you who have done it, you understand what I'm talking about. And what I've learned as I let English back into our lives bit by bit is how quickly you can slide back into, I don't want to call it a bad habit, but into how quickly you can slide away from speaking the foreign language as often as you did. Changing my phone settings to French, which actually has a bit of a cascading effect, because it now every time because now makes every website I visit default to French. And all of the settings, of course, were in French, and initially it was really frustrating, but I've actually seen it, and I've observed how it helps me stay in French mode when my phone and this, the text on my phone is actually in French. That also means that I'm going to start trying to find more podcasts and music in French just so that I can stay in that mode and get used to not switching back and forth. And the last thing that I'm going to do to help myself recommit and reestablish French in our household is to really pay attention to language creep. I don't know how else to call this phenomenon, but when I am switching into English for specific scenarios, I have noticed that it's really easy to stay in English if you're not paying attention. So for example, at our breakfast table, I switched to English so that our au pair will understand, and then next thing I know, I'm halfway to school still speaking English. So I really need to make sure that once the scenario is over, the situation that calls for English is over, I'm snapping right back to French. And that also in between the text on the pages, I am responding and speaking with them and asking them questions in French. So English is solely for what is written on the page, and everything other than that is happening in French. The same goes for if we're around people who are not French speakers, like at the playground, for example. Once we say bye to them, we're in French mode again. And by now my friends all understand because they know, they know that we speak French together, so they always understand if they hear us speaking French, but I want to make sure that that is another scenario where I'm always going back to French when we're alone together. Okay, so those are 3 things that I'm going to use to help amplify French in our house and to get back to where we were. You know, being a foreign language parent is really, really, really hard. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I want to make sure that all the progress and all the work that we've done is not lost and that I am controlling what I can control. Because I really do believe, to a certain extent, that the kids will follow your lead. And if you're sort of lax about, introducing the majority language, that they might see that also as a sign to use more English as well. So if this is not your experience, or if this is your experience, please comment below. I'm curious. How do you all approach these sorts of things? Do you let your majority language in? Are you strict about it? And what has worked for you? Do you have any tips or any advice? I would love to hear it, so please comment below. Okay guys, stay strong. This is a marathon, not a race, and we can do it. And hopefully all of you can also help me recommit as well. Check me, and if I'm doing things that I said I wasn't gonna do, please let me know. I can use all the help I can get. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time, for following our journey, and I hope this video encouraged you, and I will speak to you in the next one.